Joining me right now is Jocelyn Macurdy Keatts, and I can't wait to bring her on. Jocelyn, get on in here. You might know Jocelyn if you watch ACT.TV because she is our Washington correspondent and one of the co-hosts of our show, Solidarity Live at 11 a.m. We are turning into the MSNBC of progressive talk where one host has the other host on, and later on the other host has the other one on.
Hi, Julianna. I love you. Good morning.
We used to be on Twitch together all the time, and now we are not. And it's just great to see you again. How are you?
Oh, my goodness. What a year it's been. How about you?
We've relocated out of New York City, as many young families have. It's, there's a lot of grief that goes along with that, and, kind of a lot of joy and a lot to figure out. Like, can I change my... do I have enough time I already looked it up. In order to change where you're voting in Connecticut, you have to go get your driver's license in Connecticut. I don't know how long that's going to take. I don't even know where the DMV is. I don't know. So it's a process. So I'm either going to drive back to New York and vote in my old address, or I don't know. You got to figure it out. If the post office isn't working, what are we going to do?
What an exciting time to be alive. So I'm sad I didn't see you at Netroots this week.
I didn't see anyone at Netroots this week.
None of us. Well, I mean, you're right. None of us saw anyone at Netroots. That was the point.
Netroots Nation, if you don't know, Netroots Nation is a large gathering of progressives. It started out as progressive media makers and bloggers, just people who all blogged on the Daily Kos platform, used to get together so they could meet each other in person once a year. And it became this huge thing where, like, presidential candidates often go, especially during an election year, to make their plea and, make their case. And last year, I think we interviewed Cory Booker. I don't know.
I was about to say, right. We, Cory Booker, Deb Haaland, a lot of Elizabeth Warren. We've had a lot of really great progressive lawmakers on ACT.TV. And we did this year technically too.
That's right, because ACT.TV produced the video, which we're going to show you a lot of, which I think was a big win for ACT.TV.
Yes.
Yeah. And a nice service we were able to do, to just get this out beyond just the Netroots people. Sure, Netroots live streams it, people know about it, but it has become a newsworthy event. One of the things I miss, though, just by watching it and participating online, is really the after and before activity, socializing. I miss socializing.
Oh, me too. I mean, this is the problem, right? Like, I think that we're all sort of in this space where how do you organize when you can't actually at least augment some of the digital things you're doing with some form of in-person communication?
And, one of the best parts about that organization is that you get to meet activists, get to meet people of prominence get to meet people of not prominence, right? It's very democratic. Everyone's just there.
Yes. And there's a dynamic where I think they actually did a pretty good job. Did you get to see any of the streams? I was impressed both with what our team was able to do and what Netroots was able to create digitally and virtually. We had, Stacey Abrams, Joe Biden,
Joe Biden, just the hopefully future president. That's it.
Hopefully.
Hopefully that office will still be at least marginally respected.
Right. Right.
Once Joe Biden starts going on Joe Rogan, we know that times have changed in the media sphere. Anyway, the progressives are still alive and still organizing. We have not given up. Even there are some that are in the street. There are some, as I reported in the news earlier, people are taking to the street, progressives and conservatives alike, to try to save the post office. But the progressive movement is still alive and kicking, which is great. You don't hear it talked about on mainstream media very much, but the truth is it's going on. And I have some you mentioned Can you talk about what you saw at Netroots Nation and what were the predominant conversations and issue areas that you tapped into?
Well, so there were some really good things happening this year. As much as, you know, Netroots is my favorite time of the year. We get to hang out in person. So I was, of course, very sad that it wasn't happening as normal, but our good friend of the show, Dr. America, Sanjeev, hosted a panel on how Medicare for all is a racial justice issue, especially right now in times of COVID. Alex did a lot of really great speaking about Social Security. And
Alex Lawson, we had him on the program.
Yes. And all the devastating things the Trump administration is attempting to do to that mainstay of American life. And it, you know, a lot of really great people talking about a lot of really great things. So
a lot of the conference was focused on the upcoming election. What are some of the strategies that progressives are recommending that we take back this election and, you know, try to get rid of the Trump administration and, you know, while Trump is actually trying to steal the election?
Well, it's funny you say that because I think, you know, we're going to hear a little bit from Stacey Abrams this morning, and she said something that I can't get out of my head, that you can't have electoral politics without voting, and you can't have protesting, and you can't have protesting without electoral politics. You need one or the other. And I think that's sort of the fractionalism we feel on the Democratic side of the country right now. I don't want to say the left, because I think we can agree that a lot of Democrats are not actually on the left, really. But in the Democratic Party, you have a lot of people who are really in touch with protest movements, which is absolutely important. That's how we create political platforms, and that's how we get what we want. But you do need to vote still. I'm not trying to vote shame people, because I don't think that's productive, but it is really important, especially in elections like this, when you're voting against literal Nazis, that you vote.
I think that activists would understand. I come up against this quite a bit, you know, but you would think that activists understand that all activism is a process, and the closer you can get to the goal, the better, right? And I think it's all agreeable that on many levels, maybe not all. I don't know what Biden's stance is on, like, Israeli occupations, right? That's not, you know, maybe not all, but he's closer on many progressive, at least he's sane, you know, and he's closer on many progressive issues than Trump would be to our goals in there's no question about that. So I don't understand how people could possibly say I'm sitting out the election because he's an imperfect candidate.
It's really confusing, right? Because on one hand, I 100% understand intellectually where people are coming from, which is, you know, the Democratic Party has betrayed us so many times, and betrayed vulnerable communities, and betrayed
who's voting for the Democratic Party? You're just you're doing a thing. Like, you don't have to necessarily drink the Kool-Aid in order to do the most pragmatic thing for your own family.
Well, and that's a thing, right? It's, you know, I understand, I empathize, but it is, at the end of the day, it's difficult for me to, like, okay, but I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about Donald Trump. We're not talking about, like, if we're talking about Joe Biden versus a more centrist corporate Republican candidate, okay, maybe I can see the argument that there isn't really a difference, whatever.
I wouldn't even say that, because all of those centrist candidates led us to this. I mean, you know, the fight is always happening. I'm a Bernie person.
Of course, we both are.
Yeah. So, you know, with that said, you know, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure I'm not convincing anybody, because you're much more supportive. You're like, I totally get where you're coming from, but if you could just vote for Biden, that would be swell. Where I'm like, don't be an idiot.
Okay, I think you have more. We're both Italian, but I think you have more of the Italian blood than I do. That's
maybe so.
Wait, was that racial? I didn't mean that to be racial.
No, I loved it. It's all very confusing, and I know your heart is genuine and pure. So I don't question anything you say. How did the national reckoning with racism show up at Netroots, by the way?
So I thought it was really exciting to see. The keynote the plenary was opened up with a slate of really compelling young Black, both candidates and members of Congress who are like, there's so many incredible, like I can't even name all of them. Like, and Stacey Abrams, like it was, I am trying to remember. Hold on. Who said this? Somebody said this was the year for Black politics. And I agree. Love it. And importantly, Kamala Harris, whether or not she's your person, is the first Black woman to be a vice presidential pick and eventually vice president. There's no way that's right. There's no way that's not going to be historic. It was a really, really good year, I think, for Black Lives Matter. Went from something that was considered a controversial movement to 85% of Americans are in line both with the movement itself and their demands of defunding the police, stop racially profiling innocent civilians. And that it shouldn't have taken us this far to get to that, but I'm excited we're here now for sure.
Talk about the activism, the campaigns, and the movements that you learned about that our viewers can join in on.
So, oh God. Okay. So
there's so many. It's like, even when you're there in person, the whole problem with Netroots is like, oh, let's see. They're stopping war. They're stopping environmental catastrophe. There's learning how to undermine Monsanto. There's economic justice, and it's all at 11:15. Like, it's just hard to, there was so much. I'm not a commercial for Netroots, but I've been going for like 10 years.
It's so good. And there is so much. There's so many people. So the Hip Hop Caucus is one Black-led organization that is doing a lot with voter registration and their Respect My Vote campaign. Obviously, Movement for Black Lives and Black Lives Matter are doing a lot of amazing work, both around this cycle and around their general work of defunding the police. There's so many organizations that are doing really, really exciting things. And seriously, I mean, I don't want to spam you guys, but just like look up the progressive candidates that are running both this cycle and in upcoming cycles, because we just saw the Squad crushed it in their primaries. Crushed it. And the mainstream media, not to sound like Trump and diminish CNN or anything, but you were reading it, you would think that these women were about to be kicked out of office, and they won by ridiculously wide margins, even in races where they were terribly outfunded.
I don't understand how these people, the Chris Cuomos of the world, like are not embarrassed when they just say this thing and then it's completely wrong, and they don't go back and be like, you know what, I was wrong. Let me take a look into the. No, they just stick with the corporate. They just stick with the corporate line, and they just put out propaganda. Is basically what they're doing.
Well, and I think you and I have talked about this. So there is a dynamic where. You and I talk about this all the time. I don't think it's like an explicit conspiracy. I think there's this social hegemony that comes from these people are around other centrist, well-privileged, well-funded people, and they don't understand, like, no, America is very much about this progressive movement that's happening. It's not a fringe thing anymore, if it ever was.
I feel it's funny. I don't want to get all personal here, but I just moved into an area where we went and met some of our neighbors because there was kiddie soccer, right? So we met. I'm officially a soccer mom now. Lucia kicked the ball a few times, and it was wonderful. And it was like myself and some other, well, not me, but a lot of the people who live here now use these places where I live as vacation homes and not homes. And then there's, yeah. And then there's people who live here full time. And I'm like, ooh, it's a tale of two cities, the tale of two cities condos. And it's kind of really interesting to have come. I just have been in my own little circle for a while with only progressives, and to bump up against some of the other parents who are just like, I'm just hoarding real estate. Everything's fine. That was that was the conversation. And I was like, God, you're so boring. So when she said, the woman said, so I hope they're not watching, but I would bet my bottom dollar that they're not. She said something like, isn't everyone who lives in New York City's pastime just looking at real estate? And my first thought was like, oh God, that's so boring. And my second thought was, well, I actually fight against the idea of private property and property ownership in general, but it didn't come to me in the moment to say it. I wasn't ready to, I haven't been ready to out myself as a, socialist quite yet. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Give it. Yeah. No, you got to wait for the right moment, but I love that.
Like secret socialism. So you're here for the lady. You're here for the free soccer for your child, but you spend your life. Okay. That was the whole thing.
I mean, I got into this debate. It was more like an argument because we've been having for 10 years with a family member. And like the upper middle class arguments for the oppressors are just bonkers. Bonkers. You want to hear this? Okay, so we were talking about single payer healthcare, and he was like, well, but did you know that 70% of maladies are lifestyle caused? And I'm like, okay.
You mean like my lifestyle of being poor and living next to, like, say, a plant that dumps toxics into my water? Yeah, that's my lifestyle choice. I chose that.
And it's also, I mean, like, how can you have been a news consuming person over the age of 25 and not understand things like food deserts?
Because it's exactly what you were saying. News consuming. If they think they're consuming news by watching CNN, they're not really news consuming.
That's true.
We're back.
I mean, and that's the problem because you have all these PhDs and social scientists doing really very vivid pictures of what inequality means for both personal health and political structures. And yet it's like, wow, why is it that everybody who dies of COVID is fat? Wow, what an intelligent thing to say. It's like, okay, that's not, I'm so tired of hearing very limited views that are there to support people's internal prejudice. Like, sure, it is, of course, it's good to be a healthy weight, but you can't have that conversation unless you're talking about the other stressors and the other factors that tend to go with people where lifestyle decisions maybe aren't. I don't even like calling them decisions.
Mm-hmm. Right. What's available? It's like the availability of resources.
If you have 3 jobs in a place where housing is exorbitantly expensive, you're not going to have time to go do yoga and drink kale smoothies.
Exactly. When the capitalist structure, corporate structure, is sucking the life out of you, is it really your fault if you come down with diabetes? I mean, give me a break.
Seriously.
Who blames people for disease anyway?
I mean, it's so crazy, right? Like if there's just a complete lack of awareness about what life looks like for people who work.
This is not your mom, right? I'm assuming, because your mom's a doctor, isn't she?
No, it's not my mom.
It better not be your mom.
It is not my mother.
I was only thinking that because I'm like your mom's age. So I mean, like, oh, this is fun.
No, it's bad. We, the socialists, will overcome, Juliana.
We will, and we'll do it by watching people who are, who are on our side, who are doing things like speaking out. I have this from Representative Ayanna Pressley on the continued civil rights struggle from Netroots Nation. Let me take a look. Let's take a look-see over here. I think I got my screen share going. We have some new technology here, so I'm excited about that. Yeah, there she is. Look, we did it. Hooray. Okay, so here she is. Let's take a look. Now listen.
What does it take to break through generations of institutional oppression, systemic racism, white supremacy to advance true justice for our communities? Now, it certainly requires an acknowledgement of the challenges that we face. Today, our communities are facing overlapping crises of public health, economic inequality, and systemic racism. We know that Black, Brown, and Indigenous people are dying at disproportionately higher rates from COVID-19, or what Pastor Warnock in Georgia refers to as COVID-19, making plain the barriers to healthcare that have endangered our lives for centuries. And of course, the only thing this virus couldn't kill is racism. And we are so devastatingly reminded by the murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, and so many others. My heart breaks at the profound hurt being inflicted on our communities, but it also swells because I know that this moment of unprecedented hurt demands and requires of us unprecedented organizing unprecedented mobilizing, and unprecedented hope. Earlier today, I was at a convening with some colleagues at Local Progress, and one of my brothers in arms there was offering that, despair is clear, but hope is more opaque. And so that's why this moment we find ourselves in of what this reimagining, this re-envisioning, this reconstructing, what does it really look like? Because hope is more opaque. But these are unprecedented times, and we are experiencing unprecedented hurt, and that does demand of us unprecedented organizing, unprecedented mobilizing, and unprecedented hope. So my heart breaks that we have to keep coming together to demand that people affirm and see our humanity, but it swells that we keep coming together. Activists, advocates, agitators, organizers, table shakers, disruptors, creatives, so many of them, young, Black, brown men and women who have taken to the streets and the halls of power to demand justice. The community organizers who are leading this movement, they are not destroyers. They are community builders who are carrying forward the best traditions of the civil rights movement. And no, this is not a second civil rights movement, this national reckoning on racial justice. We have been in it the whole time. So this is not a second movement. Right. We have been in it the entire time. Let us be clear. The injustice plaguing our communities is not naturally occurring. It has been created and exacerbated by generations of bigoted policies which have codified racism, exclusion, and bigotry. Now, growing up in Chicago, my mother and I lived in the residual aftershocks and aftermath of redlining and the failed war on drugs. And those are the same challenges which persist today. So this is why I say policy is my love language, because if the hate, hurt, and harm afflicting our communities disproportionately has been legislated, that does mean that we can legislate healing and justice too. We can pass policies and budgets that actually value Black and brown lives. And if it feels uncomfortable or unfamiliar to some, it is because we have never done it before. Again, hope is opaque. So how do you build something when you don't really have a stabilizing reference? We are our own analog in this moment. And that is as liberating as it can be paralytic. But still, we do have some notes that we can refer to. And we need to buckle up because, listen, my mother let me know early on. She did not patronize me as a child and read me,
Oh my gosh, I don't patronize my own kid. I just tell her like it is. I'm like, well.
Fairy tales for bedtime stories. She read me the speeches of Barbara Jordan and Shirley Chisholm. And my coloring book was the Black Liberation Flag. And she made sure that I knew that as beautiful and as prideful as I should be about being Black, that I was being born into a struggle. And that was a cradle to grave struggle. And it was her expectation that I would be active in that struggle. So buckle up. Because if you look at what are the founders of the other founders of our democracy, who have not been given equal foothold in our history books, but if you look to them, the movement in the 1950s and 1960s and about the scale and scope of our activism at that time, let me just give you some numbers here. The Greensboro sit-ins were 6 months. The Freedom Rides were 7 months. The Montgomery bus boycott was 382 days. So when Rashad says that we're in the Underground Railroad phase, he's right. We are just getting started. And as we fight for a culture shift in this country, and we've all been echoing this, we must also fight for a power shift. In the past...
Beautiful. Beautiful.
I love her so much.
Those numbers that she gave out, how many Americans do you think actually know their history and how long of those boycotts, how long those actions of the past went on?
I mean, it's so funny you say this, Juliana, because as always, we could talk for hours about this menu. So let's do it. What are you doing today? Let's just 8 hours. Let's go.
On Facebook, we're having a good time.
Oh, I miss you. So I have been really trying, and because like we're these progressive journalists, and I feel
Jocelyn,
I'm very.
Are you still there?
What? I'm still here. Can you see me? Hello?
We're back. What happened?
Good?
Okay, could you just start over with what you said? I don't know.
Okay, so I was going to say, so we're these progressive journalists, and I think we're both very sincere about knowing what we're talking about if we're going to talk on camera. And so I've been really making an intention to not just consume books and media, which are very like news cycle-y, but very historically informed. And it's been shocking, as someone who loves history, how difficult it is to find historical texts about protest movements. It's very easy to find things about elections, presidents, wars, anything of that nature. But when it comes to social movements, it's not that they're not there, but they're very few and they're very dense, And it really hurts me that these social movements, which have absolutely shaped who we are as a nation, are sort of viewed as peripheral to like what I call great lives history, where it's like JFK rose in the morning and was like, I shall end racism. And it's like, that's not what happened.
One guy. Yeah.
Like,
guy. Irish guy. Yeah. Exactly.
But have you noticed this too? We really love this idea of like some rich,
like Jesus.
Yes. We love this idea of some rich politician who's like, you know what I shall do? I shall give women the right to vote. And it's like, that's not how it goes though.
And I think that's important to keep in mind as we constantly have to fight back against either trolls or who are coming into the stream either on Facebook, and we're about to watch Elizabeth Warren give her talk as well. Well, I got to collect my thoughts here about what you said and doing the tech at the same time.
Sorry.
No, you make a very good point, as usual, Jocelyn. We're talking, by the way, with Jocelyn Macurdy Keatts. She is the host of Solidarity Live at 11 a.m. right here on act.tv.
Same time, different day.
Different day. We're trying to, combat the trolls, basically, with... I'd hate to tell some of you, but some of your rhetoric is the same as Russian bot and Russian troll, troll, right-wing troll rhetoric. So if your rhetoric matches up with their rhetoric, you might want to check your stance. But this idea, this idea of what you were saying, Jocelyn, of like, we're looking for the one hero because history writes it that way. History writes it that it's one hero that saves the day. No, it's never one hero. The Underground Railroad was not one person. It was a lot of people. And, I wish that seeking a savior thing would die.
Oh my God.
So that people could be like, this is what's informing the like, I can't vote for Biden. Name one thing he's done that's good. Well, he's not the savior. You're not voting for a savior.
Right.
You're voting for one person who's better than another. And that's enough. That is enough, because you're still going to have to go out in the street. What is it like? We want to just retire. Okay, it's good. We got Bernie. Now we're not going to do anything. No, if we had gotten Bernie, we would now then be doing more of everything.
Bernie does problematic shit all the time. And I mean, it's like you're saying, yes. And I'm really sick of, I'm starting to hate superhero movies because it's like it's the swelling music, and then it's a guy, and he's usually really traditionally attractive, and he's definitely a guy. And then it's like, he like lifts the planet up and then everything goes back to normal. That's not how politics works.
And I have to say, that starts with the kids, like the mother's milk, because I'm watching cartoons with my daughter these days, and it's like, all they want to tell your kids is like a superhero. That's like pumping up their ego and setting them up for having a horrible, painful life of ego. It doesn't set you up to enjoy the beautiful things of life. And You know, they start early destroying your sense of self and all that is sacred within you.
Well, it's so funny you say this. I mean, because you and I both love to talk about psychology at some point in the show. So
we always do.
We gotta. I was talking to a friend about this. We're both childhood friends. We both got psychology degrees, and we were talking about our issues with low self-esteem as women, like how we overcome that. And we ended up realizing, you know, as much as struggling with low self-esteem isn't great, I would still rather my kids have that than be pathological narcissists like Donald Trump, you know?
Yeah, at least they won't hurt anyone with their low self-esteem.
Exactly.
They're not going to do anything much.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have this culture of narcissism where we like narcissists because it's like you're saying, it's plugged into us early that there is this one super confident person who's going to come along when, like, look at some of the progressive champions we've had in the past. JFK was a misogynistic womanizer with ties to the mob. Woodrow Wilson was literally...
Well, what's wrong with having ties to the mob? I don't know.
I apologize. I apologize to all my Italian viewers and family members. But you know, and then Woodrow Wilson was a KKK member. Like, all these people had downright evil shit, and yet they still passed very progressive legislation. I obviously would prefer somebody who is not any of those things. But when you look at history, you realize, like, yeah, I agree with people who are like, but can we push Joe Biden? I don't know. I mean, I think people are right to be skeptical and not pie in the sky level optimists. But
and even if we can't push him, isn't he still better than fucking Trump?
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
Exactly.
That's where I stand, and I stick with where I stand.
I agree. I 100% agree.
Okay, let's watch what Elizabeth Warren said from Netroots. I met her last time. Remember? We ran upstairs because she was speaking. Do you remember? We were like,
yes, oh my God,
things down. We were literally taking these down because we were.
That was such a dramatic day.
We upstairs with the cameras.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I remember.
All right, here we go. Here she is.
The progressive vision.
Hold on, I'm going to back it up a tiny bit.
He has embraced the progressive vision. This pandemic has also changed the world. It's changed our politics here in America. It's made it clear that in times of crisis, state and local officials play an essential role in
Cuomo
protecting our communities. So what this says to me is that now more than ever, we need new leaders, we need new voices, we need new people fighting for a government that...
Vote Biden. How do you say we need new voices and new people? And then you're like, old man Joe has been here with us 300 years. But still, you know.
Works for everyone. We need to elect Democrats up and down the ballot to put leaders with progressive values in positions of power. It is simply not enough to win the White House. We also have to hold the House. We have to take back the Senate. We need to win in states all around this country, state houses. We need to put people at the local level who are progressives. We need to put people in positions where they can enact big structural changes. So I'm hopeful. I'm working hard, but I'm hopeful.
You are working hard. I have to say, you know, it's really...
Heather McGhee, she's been on our show. She's fabulous from Color of Change. Hopefully we can get her back on soon. Alana, are you listening? Get Heather McGhee back on here.
It does seem like you haven't stopped since the campaign. You know, every day there are 4 different fights that Elizabeth Warren is picking with somebody who needs a punch in the nose.
Julianna.
Whether it's the Postmaster General, whether it's, you know...
Can you mute your mic when the video is on?
Sure. Sorry about that.
Unmute it when you want to talk. And
got it.
Sound
got
better.
it. Got it. Sorry, everybody. We have a new technology we're working on today, and I think it already looks amazing. But here we go. Sorry. Here's Heather and Senator Warren.
Wall Street banker who's not doing the right thing. It just feels like you're always on top of the fights that need to be picked, and I mean the good ones. And it makes me remember just something that happened earlier this summer, which was that, you know, at a time when it's Mitch McConnell's Senate and we have, as Democrats, very, very little power, you were able to extract an extraordinary win, which was you were able to win people over. And by people, I actually mean, the Republican majority in the Congress, to put together a veto-proof majority for your amendment to strip the U.S. military from all honors and namings for Confederates, to take the U.S. Confederacy out of the U.S. military. It's something Donald Trump was opposed to, and it was something that the Republican Party, the members of the Senate who have not been able to find their backbone on many, many issues, were able to. And obviously that's because of the strength of the movement for Black Lives. But there was so much going on. I feel like a lot of people didn't see that fight. I'd love to have you talk a little bit about that. How did that happen, and what lessons does that victory kind of give us?
I'll tell you exactly what it does. It says, when you see your opening, take it. I'm on Senate Armed Services Committee, and I've been in a lot of fights from that place, principally around nuclear weapons, the fact that the Trump administration is pulling out of the treaties on nuclear weapons, on non-proliferation, on trying to make sure that we are always in communication with other nuclear powers, and about putting more money into our nuclear weapons program. This is a fight I've been in all along, and I just keep banging away at that one every single year. The fight that we treat our military better, that we pay them better, that we do better on housing, that we do better on their education for their children. That's been a big part. The fights that Kirsten Gillibrand, and I always want to do a shout out here, that she was fighting before I ever even got to the Senate, about dealing with sexual assault and sexual harassment in the military. So there are a lot of ongoing fights. But it was the right moment on the Confederate generals and naming. And so I put together an amendment, and there were a lot of folks who said to me, don't push this. A negative vote's going to hurt us. Just leave it alone. The country's moving in the right direction. And all I could hear in my head every time I heard this was, with all deliberate speed. Yeah. And, we'll get there eventually. Well, today needs to be eventually. Now needs to be eventually. So we're doing what's called the markup, where everybody's in the room who's on Senate Armed Services Committee. And of course, it had been blocked, and Huff was not going to put it into the overall bill. So I brought it up in committee. And by golly, there were a lot of people who spoke out in favor of it. Doug Jones, Tim Kaine were just eloquent on it. Angus King spoke up, and there were Republicans who listened to that. They had some back and forth, but at the end of the day, we got our vote, we got it in, and it's in the House. And that means, although the bill now goes to conference, we're going to get rid of our nation honoring the people who took up arms against our country for the purpose of preserving slavery.
There you have it. I love her.
She's amazing.
I want to fangirl out here, and Heather McGhee is wonderful too. I encourage everyone here. I'm going to put this link into our Twitch page, but you can go to Facebook and watch these whole things at act.tv, or on Netroots Nation's Facebook page has these as well. So let me put this one in the chat, and you can watch it yourselfers. What are your thoughts about that, Jocelyn?
I mean, where to start? So it's nice to see Elizabeth Warren at Netroots. She's kind of like our queen, or has been before all this weird drama of the past year.
Yeah.
But yes, I 100% agree with everything she's saying, of course. And it is interesting when she was talking about the troops. I always think about this, right? Because you want both sides to have something intelligent to offer. But it is really interesting to me that the Republican Party, which is so rah-rah, we love the troops, we love the cops, doesn't treat the troops terribly well. Why is that?
Yeah, and why do they not mind the troops? Why do they like it? They think it's okay. You know, I don't know. My understanding is that there is quite a bit of white nationalism in that area. So no matter what Trump does, it's okay to be a racist now. And those people have been hoping that that was okay for a long time.
Yes. Yes.
Not all of them. I'm just reading, you know, that.
I read a fascinating, and this sort of ties in with our conversation from earlier. I read a fascinating study this weekend about how people who say that, oh, because, you know, the Republicans have started saying that Black people just need to drink less, and that's why they're dying of COVID in faster rates. So they did a study where
my God.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I need a minute.
Did you see that?
No.
Yes.
I'm glad I missed that one. No,
they're saying that Black communities need to just take better care of themselves, and that's why they're dying of COVID in faster rates. And so they did blame
the victim, of course.
Well, right.
Well, Black people shouldn't have been slaves then. They should have not chosen that lifestyle. I mean,
literally, remember that Kanye quote where he was like, if I were a slave, I would have become free. It's like, what? But that's some American thinking right there. Have you tried not being oppressed? Have you tried that? It's just ridiculous. Anyway, so you have this public opinion poll, and they asked people like some tester questions to figure out if they really thought lifestyle was the concern or if they were just racist. Spoiler alert, they're just racist. Like, they did not have the same lifestyle concerns when other white communities fell ill with specific. It's ridiculous. And, you know, we really do need people like Senator Warren who are willing to call it out, because she is and has since the beginning of her tenure.
Up next in our cavalcade of great things that happened at Netroots Nation that we weren't able to go to because COVID-19 kept us all at our homes. By the way, it was supposed to be in Denver this year, so Denver lost out on the cash. I hear a little bit of an echo. I'm not sure where that's coming from. So
I don't. I think you're okay. Maybe.
Huh? We'll find out. I don't know. There's a lot of people on this call, so we'll see. Yeah, maybe it's Lana. Okay, I muted everyone, so who knows what that could possibly be. Hold on, I'm fixing. You're watching ACT.TV's live coverage of the progressive movement. I'm happy to be here with you. I'm Julianna Forlano here with Jocelyn Macurdy Keatts, Washington correspondent for ACT.TV. Don't we love to go on today because there's two of us here from the same. It's just great. It's fun.
I know. It's nice.
Okay, so let's watch Stacey Abrams from Netroots. She was speaking with Jessica Bird. Stacey Abrams, what everyone wanted to see Joe Biden pick. I know. They wanted to see this pick. They wanted to see him signal that he was going to go in a progressive direction. What, are you crazy? Okay, that wasn't going to happen. I mean, maybe, but
I mean, I don't know. I would have loved a Stacey Abrams be paid.
Yeah, me too. And all the progressives I know would have loved it as well. But you know, now that I have friends who are middle of the road, and those are the people who are most likely to come out and vote, and they love her. Mm-hmm. They love Kamala. You know, they love Kamala Harris. So they're fine with. There was no, you know. They're middle of the roaders. There's a lot of them. There might be more of them than there are of us right now. So
yes,
we'll see, you know, right? I mean, I think we have to understand there is more middle of the road Democrats than there are, you know, progressive wingers.
I don't know if I agree with that. I might sort of. I think that there are definitely more centrists in power, and that's something we have to accept. Like, seriously, we have to accept that. And the levers of power matter. Until we live in a raw democracy where public opinion actually rules things, like, we do have to contend with the corporate Democrats and the corporate powers that be. And like, I'm not going to say that I want someone that Wall Street loves, but like, knowing how to interact with those forces is important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You said it. You heard it here. You can leave your comments of hatred in our YouTube. We're on the same network as James, right? James is like, burn it down. So, so.
Hey, if that's an option, let's do it. I'm just saying.
We give you a lot of options here at Act TV for who you might. Okay, so here's Stacey Abrams talking to Jessica Bird.
I love her. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Have you met her, by the way, as I get this set up?
Sorry, I'd muted myself. Oh, yes, I did at a Run for Something event. She's really great.
Fabulous. All right, here she goes.
Hey everyone, there's no audio right now, Julianna. Just wanted to let you know.
Oh. Apparently you've just been watching Stacey Abrams, pantomime this very powerful speech that
I thought that was just me. Okay. I saw this earlier though. So.
Okay. Well, we're going to rewind it because it was awesome. And if you're still here with us, that's awesome too. Anyway, we're starting out doing a new technology here. So I appreciate everyone bearing with us on this, our first day of school here at Act TV when we're using this new thing. So my apologies and thanks for sticking with. Here she is. Gotcha. Give it another go. Hold up, because this thing was amazing. Super powerful what she's saying here. Let's take a look. I'm going to play the question this time. I didn't last time.
With their place inside of this moment as a voter, as feeling excited, inspired, confident, what would you say to them? And then I want to take that a step further because I've been arguing with my brothers for the last 2 weeks who are feeling this way as well. What's the script for our families? We're here. We're at Netroots. So we're going to figure out how to cast our votes, right? But what are we saying to the ornery brother, the mad cousin, the person who is saying that it's not enough, we haven't gotten far enough, and maybe it just doesn't matter?
So I begin with the frame of how I live my life. My great grandparents were slaves in Mississippi. My great grandparents were sharecroppers. My great grandparents were domestic workers. My grandparents were cooks who worked for 40 years at a college that for half of their tenure, their children legally could not attend. My dad is the first man in his family to go to college. My mother was the first person in her family to finish high school. And I have 2 sisters with PhDs, a brother who's a social worker, a brother who is building his life anew. And I got a sister who's a judge, the first Black woman to be a federal judge. And I stood as the first Black woman for governor for a major party in the history of our country. I believe in progress because I'm the embodiment of what that progress looks like. But I also understand that there were whips for my great-great-grandparents. There were shackles. There were dogs and hoses. There have been these moments that have dehumanized and denied their agency and their humanity and their citizenship. And my obligation is not to bemoan what preceded me, but to ensure it does not repeat itself. Yes. And that means I don't elect anyone to save me. Yes. I don't engage in the democratic process because there's someone out there whose magic pill is going to change the world. I do it because I get to shape my world. And in a democratic republic, when you have a representative democracy, The first step we take is to pick the people who speak for us and to fire them if they say the wrong things. And so I vote because it is my right to say you're wrong, or it is my right to say you need to do better. But I also believe in protest, and I've been very frustrated in this moment with this bifurcation that we hear. And I get angry with those who say just vote to those who protest, and those who protest and say voting doesn't matter. You're both wrong. Because protest is how we demand what we need, and it's how we set the vision and make it public. It is how we express the urgency of our needs. Yeah. That is what protest does, and it is absolutely necessary. It is the catalyst to change. Absolutely. Voting is protesting at the box. That is how we make protest. Yes. Because if you decide that you want X, but you never do anything, I want to live inside a house, but if I'm not willing to pick up a nail and a hammer and a board and start to build it, then I don't get to complain when it's cold and raining on me.
What else needs to be said there? Fabulous. That was, yeah.
What were we just talking about? I mean, I love it. I watched her section of the panel like 3 times. She's just amazing.
Yeah, you can watch that on act.tv and also on Netroots Nation, act.tv, yes. On Facebook. You can watch the whole thing. So if you missed it, or if this is the first time you're learning about any of this, it's great. We have another segment here of how to sustain a progressive power after elections. And I think this is an important piece too. So let me grab this here as we're going. You're watching Act TV. I'm Julianna Forlano. We're using a very new technology here that's really exciting because we get to do all this new stuff and I don't have to go on Zoom anymore. So, hey, what's coming up on your show this week, Jocelyn?
So Alex and I have a couple people we might be talking to, but we're definitely going to be talking more about Medicare for all, COVID in nursing homes, which, I mean, as the minute I said that out loud, I feel bad because I know you're all sick of it. But
no one's sick of it.
Alex and I are very entertaining people, and we are filled with rage. So it will be a cathartic experience for you because it's really important. Like, our government is killing us. Normally when people say that, they're being a little hyperbolic. Nah, this time it's pretty straightforward.
This time it's for reals.
Like, yeah. It's just, our government was like, oh, like hundreds of thousands of people are going to die. Whatever.
What could happen? Yeah, I know. And I just saw today that it's 1,000 people a day are dying, not just coming down with it, but actually dying. So
180,000 deaths. And
how is this okay? Oh, for fuck's sake. And yet people don't want to go out and vote for Biden. I get it if you think you're going to die from a disease by going out of the house. Yeah, I get that. But
mail your ballots now.
Yeah, exactly.
anywhere that early voting is allowed, just do it.
Here is Representative Jayapal talking about how to sustain progressive power after elections. Here she goes.
And sometimes that's meant taking on Democrats as well, including Democrats I love. But I think that what I have realized is that we do need to have progressives in power everywhere, on the outside, on the inside, however you want to define that, in elected office, at every level. And then we have to build the infrastructure that supports progressives to win. And that means that, we did a lot of work to build the Congressional Progressive Caucus Center and the Congressional Progressive Caucus Action Fund, a C3 and C4, that can help really coordinate on organizing, on policy, on all of these different pieces and provide information instead of getting it from lobbyists, which is what happens to people once they get into office, but also helping to elect progressives up and down the ticket. We've already seen that I think the path to progressive policy actually runs through the heart of blue districts, as well as swing districts like Katie Porter's, where Katie ran on an incredible progressive platform, and she has now become a standard bearer for those issues in a district where we've always known these issues can win, but we needed people with the courage to pick them up as Katie has done. But also in blue districts where people like Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush and Mondaire Jones, and in Washington 10, Beth Doglio, these are opportunities to actually get real progressives into blue districts that can help push and carry our message forward. So I think all of those are really important, and everything stems from grassroots organizing, whether it's in the community or whether it's in the political system.
Absolutely. Representative Lee.
Sure, progressive power is really what is moving this country forward. Someone asked me, a reporter, was Vice President Vice President Kamala Harris to be Vice President? Wasn't she too progressive? I said, wait a minute. If you think that supporting Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage, going to a living wage, if you think that supporting climate change and climate initiatives, if you support clean water and clean air, clean air, if you believe that everyone has a right to live in a decent and safe house, if you consider that progressive, then let's get it on and let's build this progressive power. And I think that and what Congresswoman Pramila said is so important, because I think there's such a way that we can organize it in an intersectional way. Because, for instance, as an African-American woman, we have a lot in common with working class white people who have lost their jobs and who have been victim of the opioid crisis. We've had to deal with this forever in our country, for 401 years. And so why don't we work together and try to build that coalition? I come again from a district that coalition politics has been the way that we all get. Coalition progressive politics is the way that people of color are elected in my district. And so now it's so important that we have that inside-outside strategy, and the Progressive Caucus, the Progressive Center, the Progressive PAC, all work together to build this kind of power. And we can't forget, we have to bring our young people along. We have to mentor our young people, because we have to pass this baton to their time now, because they have to run this lap of the race, and we have to be there to make sure that they know how to do this. And finally, we have to get money out of politics, because we have to build that progressive power around people and not profits.
Absolutely. But getting money out of politics feels like the one structural change that would fix most of the problems that we talk about.
I've been saying that for over a decade. One problem is getting money out of politics. Yeah, that'd be great. That would work great.
So true.
Then we could have a real democracy. That would be nice. Well, I look forward to that. Jocelyn, I'm glad you came on with us today. I feel like I got a little taste, and we gave the people a little bit of a taste of what Netroots is, and some progressive talk that maybe other people, don't hear quite as much, especially if you're just listening to, your MSNBCs. Even MSNBC, you don't hear this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that is true.
What are you going to do? I know what we're going to do. We're going to start our own news network, and we're going to talk to you about it from here, from our respective homes. Follow Jocelyn at Cinderella.
No, that's not my Twitter handle.
That's not you? What happened?
No, I don't know how that got on there.
Why is
My Twitter handle is at Jocelyn Macurdy K.
Who is Cinderella Town, DC? I guess
it's a long story. It's a Twitter account I made when I was like 18 for a school project. I have no idea if I did not even.
Please bring that back up. That would be great. I would love it.
It was for a media studies project when I was like 18. Leave me alone.
Oh, when I was 18, there was no Twitter or cell phones. Hey, here we are. All right. Thank you so much for joining.